No congressional audit is ever going to convince these voters, particularly when the president will continue to say that the election was stolen. The best way we can show respect for the voters who are upset is by telling them the truth.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Just over 100 days ago, that plea was made by the man who years prior was the Republican Party's standard bearer, their choice to be president of the United States. Yet his call for truth-telling has been roundly ignored and even invited a censure from his state party, a censure attempt. A prime example of what's taking place in Arizona, fueled by Donald Trump's big lie that the election was stolen from him. Republican state senators are recounting 2.1 million ballots cast in the state's biggest county, Maricopa County. They're only looking at two of the races, though. Contest for president and U.S. Senate. And what a coincidence. Those are the two races won by Democrats. Ignoring the findings of multiple state recounts, Arizona Republicans say they're examining unconfirmed claims of fraud. The faux audit now is likely to go on even longer than first expected. Arizona Republic reporting this, quote, Senate audit liaison and former Arizona Secretary of State Ken Bennett said Saturday that there was no deadline for the audit and that the recount may need to be paused on May 14th when Veterans Memorial Coliseum is reserved to host several Phoenix high schools' graduations. The backpedaling comes just days after Bennett told reporters he was confident workers would wrap up by May 14th, and despite plans to increase the number of ballot counters and shifts starting May 3rd. The effort was shrouded in mystery when it first began. Reporters were not even allowed to observe, but a judge then denied the request by Cyber Ninjas, a questionable company leading the counting, if we can call it that, for the audit to be done in secret. And on Friday, an Arizona Republic reporter was escorted from the site, quote, after posting a photo showing a former Republican legislator at a ballot counting table. The photo showed a ballot with no markings discernible on a vertical stand in front of former state representative Anthony Kern. The reporter, Ryan Randazzo, was told his press privileges were being revoked. He left the building as requested. Arizona's audit has caught the attention of many, especially the disgraced ex-president. Last week, he suggested the audit would find him thousands and thousands of votes, and then said it will lead to finding votes in other states he lost in November, like Georgia and Michigan and Wisconsin. Arizona's audit has become Trump's obsession, the Washington Post reports. Quote, ensconced at his private club in Florida, Trump asked aides for updates about the process multiple times a day, advisors said, expressing particular interest in the use of UV lights. Wow, still on the lights. To scrutinize Maricopa's ballots, a method that has bewildered election experts who say it could damage the votes. Quote, he talks about it constantly, said one person who recently visited Mar-a-Lago and listened to Trump discuss the recount for 45 minutes, speaking anonymously, of course. But the worry is not just that the former guy is blabbing about a fake audit to Mar-a-Lago visitors. It's what else he alluded to in his comments. The Post adds this. Trump's embrace of the Arizona effort, which he and his allies claim will prove that the election was stolen, has come amid mounting anxiety among election officials that similar partisan vote counts could become the norm. The perpetuation of the big lie is where we start this hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Phil Rucker's here, Washington Post senior Washington correspondent, and lucky for us, an MSNBC political analyst. Also joining us, former RNC chairman and MSNBC contributor Michael Steele. And Ryan Randazzo is here, the Arizona Republic reporter who was removed from the audit site. We have to start with you. First of all, why were you removed and what's going on in there?
Well, why I was removed is still a bit of a mystery. At first, they told me it was because I was taking pictures of volunteers. And then later they said it was because there was a ballot in the photo, and they've never really given me a clear answer. I was escorted out by security, and the person who took me outside the building just said it was over that picture. And I had tweeted a picture of a former lawmaker counting ballots, and that lawmaker was actually at the Capitol on January 6th. So I thought that was newsworthy that we had someone who traveled from Arizona to the Capitol for the riots that disrupted Congress, and now he's down counting ballots. That gentleman also was on that ballot. So I thought, again, it was newsworthy. I tweeted the picture and was quickly removed. And we've been trying to get a clear answer on why I was removed over that photo.
Ryan, did you recognize him from footage of the insurrection, or was it just something that you knew? And I want to read from your reporting on just this, because it's just extraordinary that the audit is being conducted by people who participated in the insurrection. You've reported this. Anthony Kern, a former state lawmaker who was at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th when rioters disrupted Congress, is among the people helping to count and inspect Maricopa County ballots. Wow. Kern's name appeared on all of the November ballots that he was counting Friday and Saturday at Veterans Memorial Coliseum as part of an audit ordered by the state Senate. He was nominated by the Republican Party as a presidential elector, and his name appeared on the ballot alongside then President Donald Trump's name, along with the party's 10 other electors. He also lost his re-election bid for the Arizona House. Tell us more. Is he under any scrutiny for his conduct at the Capitol on January 6th, as far as you know?
Well, Democrats in Arizona had requested that he be investigated for that participating in that event, just to see if he did commit any crimes. We don't know of any, but he clearly was there. There are photographs of him at the Capitol on the 6th. Nothing ever came of that. There's no investigation to my knowledge, but you had asked me, did I recognize him? I certainly did. There was about 100 people on the floor, but Mr. Kern is well known to Arizonans. Besides participating in the insurrection on January 6th, as a lawmaker, he was well known as well because he's on what's known as the Brady list. And this is a list of dishonest law enforcement officials. He was working as a code enforcement officer in a suburb of Phoenix, and a laptop went missing. And he apparently lied to his supervisor about that and got fired. This was right around the time he won his first term in the state house. And once he became a lawmaker in Arizona, he tried to get rid of the Brady list through legislation. So he is someone that reporters in Arizona are certainly going to recognize when they see him participating in this audit.
I need to make sure I understand everything. So he was fired and on a list of sort of discharged law enforcement officials, then became a local politician, went to the insurrection, and now his hands are touching ballots in an audit of Maricopa County votes. How did that happen in your view, Ryan?
Well, the cyber ninjas told us that they were screening the folks that they were allowing to count these ballots, and that they had done things like looked at their social media. But if you did just a cursory Google search of Anthony Kern, you would learn that he's on this list of dishonest law enforcement people. That would probably preclude you from getting a job where you handled money or any kind of security sensitive position, because he's, basically a known liar and on this county list of dishonest law enforcement. You would also see on his social media that he has tweeted things like directly to President Trump saying, I know there was fraud in this election. So he clearly has a strong bias about what happened with the November election. So to choose him as one of the people who's allowed down on the floor to count ballots and frankly be around ballots, I knew would be concerning to readers.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.